It's time for Recipe of the Day. One of Marty's favorite dinners is breaded pork cutlets. He especially likes them served with sauteed mushrooms and sauerkraut. They are so good. Really, really wonderful thing for an easy but delicious Sunday dinner. You know what I mean? Now, the version that I'm telling you about today of these breaded pork cutlets actually has some other ingredients in the breadcrumb coating that makes them extra delicious. It is some grated Parmesan cheese, dried thyme, and lemon zest. So good. I know you're going to love these. So first, what exactly are pork cutlets? They are thin slices of pork. You can either get them as like boneless pork chops that you then pound thin with a mallet. You can put them between some plastic wrap and then pound with a mallet, or with a rolling pin. That'll work. Or these days, they have them at my store all the time, the thin cut pork loin chops. I just use those. They are perfect. Sometimes they're labeled as cutlets in some stores, and sometimes they're just labeled as thin cut pork loin chops. If you go with that, then you don't have to do any pounding, which is way easier. And then you want them to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. So that's what you're looking for at the store, or if you're pounding them yourself, that is the goal, 1/4 inch thick. Okay, and then if you have 4 of those, it is perfect for serving 4 people, and it's great because they're all going to fit in a large skillet at the same time and cook at the same time. If you are making more than 4 and you don't have a skillet that you can do them all in where they're not crowding each other, then you're going to want to preheat the oven to 250 before you even start. Get out a baking sheet and put an oven-safe rack on top of it. And then when your first batch of pork chops is done, blot them with some paper towel, and you're going to transfer them to that rack and then put them into your warm oven to stay warm, and the air is going to circulate around them so that they stay crisp while you cook the second batch. Okay, but I'm going to assume that we just have 4 of them to do, and so we're just doing one batch. You're going to put 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour into a shallow bowl or a pie plate, and you're going to add to that 1 teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. Then in a second bowl, put 2 large eggs, crack them into there, and add in 2 tablespoons of milk, or if you have heavy cream in the fridge, it is wonderful with 1/2 milk and 1/2 cream. So that's 1 tablespoon of each. It just gives it like a little bit richer flavor, you know? So you whisk that all together until it is nice and liquidy. I kind of like to go in with my fork and scoop it up, and if it drops off of the tines of the fork really quickly, then it's sort of been whisked enough that it's not clumping together, that the egg isn't holding together on itself anymore, if that makes sense. Then in a third bowl or pie plate, you are measuring in 1 cup of panko breadcrumbs, 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan cheese, 1 teaspoon of dried thyme, and the zest of 1/2 of a lemon. It doesn't sound like very much, but it really does make a difference here. Okay, and now we're ready to bread our pork cutlets. We are using the very standard technique for breading meat like this. It's called to panne, P-A-N-N-E, with an accent aigu. I don't know what the English word for that is because I learned it in French. It is the one that is pointing up and to the right. Oh wait, maybe it's called acute. Is that right? Anyways, it's P-A-N-N-E with an accent on it. And then what you do is you take your first pork chop and you put it in your seasoned flour, and just the natural moisture on the pork is going to cause the flour to stick to that meat. Now, I will say that usually when people are telling you how to panne, how to bread, they tell you to keep one hand for dry ingredients and one hand for wet, so you don't end up with like a batter forming on your fingers. I have never been good at this. I end up with my hands coated in everything. And so what I actually use is either a fork or a couple of forks, or I have these little tongs. And I just find, now I'm not touching it at all. I don't have to worry about it. I will put one of these little tongs in each of the 3 bowls, and then I just move, and you're only doing 4 of them. So even if you do mix it up and get a wet one in the dry or dry in the wet, you're not using up a ton of ingredients in that clumping, and it's not going to make that much of a mess, right? Okay, so your pork is in the flour bowl, and then you coat both sides of it, and then you move it over into the egg. Well, now the egg is wet. It's going to stick to that dry flour coating. That's how this whole process works. It's like wet stuff wants to be with dry stuff will stick to wet stuff, and that is how that coating ends up adhering so well to the pork. So into the egg, and then from the egg into the breadcrumbs. Now, what I like to do for the breadcrumbs is I usually use a larger plate for this, and I kind of spread them out, and then I would put the pork on 1/2 or one side of the plate, and then I'll use a dry hand or a spoon to spoon some breadcrumbs up up over top, and then I can kind of push down on it, and that's going to help the breadcrumbs on the top that I'm pushing on stick, and also the ones underneath the pork that it's sitting on, those are going to stick too, and then flip it over and repeat and push down. If I just push down straight on the pork, then my hands are going to get wet with the egg that's there, so that's why I scoop some of the breadcrumbs on there first. Okay, and then that should completely coat your pork cutlet in nice tasty breadcrumbs. Transfer all of your pork cutlets as they're coated to a plate, and then you're ready to shallow fry them. So you're going to get a large skillet over medium heat, and you add enough oil so that it's about 1/8 of an inch deep. And we are using vegetable oil or grapeseed oil here. Those are my favorites for this. They have a slightly higher smoking point, and they don't have any flavor like olive oil would. We don't really want to flavor the breadcrumbs with olive oil. We want it very neutral. Now, depending on the size of your skillet, that's going to be about 6 to 8 tablespoons of the oil. You want that oil to get to 325 to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's not deep enough to use a candy thermometer to get exactly the right temperature. So what I sometimes do is get a little bit of water on my fingers, stand very far back, and sort of spray it over onto the skillet. If it spatters everywhere, it's hot enough. That seems a little dangerous now that I'm telling you to do it, so maybe don't do that. Instead, take the end of a wooden spoon or a chopstick and touch that into the oil. If it bubbles right away, it's ready. The other thing you can do is actually take one of your pork cutlets, holding it with a pair of tongs, and just dip one little edge into it. And if it sizzles, if it starts bubbling right away, then you know to go ahead. If it's not yet sizzling, then wait another minute or two, okay? Now put the cutlets into that pan, and you're cooking until they're brown underneath. It's going to be 2 to 3 minutes per side. I always find this is one of those challenges where you want to make sure that they're browning evenly. Sometimes you need to spin them around. Sometimes one side of the pan is hotter than the other, so you're turning the pan around a little bit, but just watch them, let them brown on the bottom, try to keep it even through those variety of techniques, and then flip them over to the other side, brown on that side as well. And while that last side is browning, I like to get out a dinner plate lined with paper towels, and then once they're done, I transfer them to that paper towel and just blot some of the excess oil off of them. You don't need that, so just get that off of there. And then I say serve these with some lemon wedges on the side, or like I said, a little sauerkraut and sauteed mushrooms. It's going to be delicious. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there, or find it in our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/recipeotd. And hey, just a quick note. I'm on a recording hiatus right now, so for the next little while, I'm replaying episodes from the archives, including this one. If you heard me mention a holiday, a season, or something going on in my life that seemed a bit off, that's why. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you're enjoying these older episodes. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, cookfor2.us, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.